Welcome to Used Car News Podcast. Used Car News is your top source for fast and reliable news that car dealers can rely on for this evolving industry. Here are this month's top stories. The National Independent Automobile Dealers Association lobbied in D.C. Members of the auto industry are working to stop catalytic converter thefts. And the Virginia Independent Automobile Dealers Association elected their new president. But first, we sit down with Tony Long, the Executive Director of the International Automotive Remarketers Alliance.
Hello, this is Jeffrey Ballant. I'm Managing Editor of Used Car News, and this is the Used Car News Podcast. This edition, we have a great guest. It's Tony Long, who's Executive Director of the International Automotive Remarketers Alliance. Tony, thank you for being here.
Well, it's always a pleasure. You and Colleen are part of the family. Used Car News has always been supportive of our association, and we're just happy to be here.
Okay, Tony, I know people today may know you from IARA because you're everywhere. But could you tell us how you started out in the automotive industry?
Wow. I guess you could say I was born into it. A lot of people might say that, but my dad was always involved in the auto industry, the used car business. I kind of grew up around it. So it's no real surprise that my first real job was a sales job at Twin City Buick in Alcoa, just a few miles down the road from where I live now. And it was around that same time that Dad decided to build an automobile auction. And I started helping him around with that, around my schedule, and part-time at first. And then we spent 20 years together growing that business. And during that time, I got to be involved in the association side of things, boards and whatnot, the president of the Southern Auto Auction Association, and then later national board and member of the president of the National Auto Auction Association. So yeah. I guess that's where I first got my feet wet in this association business. The year I served, we didn't have an executive director most of the year, and we were busy hiring some young guy named Frank Hackett that year, and he stuck around for about 17 years, so that was a pretty good hire. And
for about a minute, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I've been around this for a while now, and I just finished 9 years with the IARA, and it's just been an honor to serve with those guys and get to know more and more people.
Yeah, now that's interesting. So you go from working in auctions and working in the auto business. Now you're doing being an advocate, being in a trade association. What about this attracted you?
Well, I used to knock on these guys' doors, the consigners, that is, and ask them for their business. So I've kind of knew a lot of those people from my days and my activities in the association world within AAA. And so it's always been an interesting dance, between consigners and the auctions and other service providers. There's all kinds of people that do business. So it's been really interesting sitting on the other side of the desk for this and understanding the challenges they have. And they're just like the auction professionals. They're forever having to hone their craft and become better at what they do and stay ahead of the curve. There's so many new things coming down the pike, and so it's an interesting type of occupation. You get a little teaspoon of this and a teaspoon of that of everything that's going on in the business.
Yeah, I got to say, when I started out at Used Car News, I was covering dealers in the independent side, and the first meeting I attended, I think it was a car, but with IARA, and it was like, despite doing that for a long time on the independent side, it was a whole new world for me too, like you said, in terms of the remarketing side. So it was really good. The late Tim Swift was kind of held by hand through those meetings, kind of introducing all you folks. So that was good.
Yeah, it's funny. You and I have been around a long time and know a lot of the same people, it sounds like. So
yeah, that's great. So tell us about IARA and what it does and who it serves.
Yeah, the International Automotive Remarketers Alliance is just that. We even call our meetings roundtable meetings because we try to give everybody in the industry a seat at the table. We're a little bit unique in that yes, we do represent the consigners. We're a consigner organization, and that part of it continues to grow. And we've got most of the major players that handle of the vast majority of consignment going through the lanes and online and whatnot. But by involving the auctions and the service providers, really anybody that touches these cars during the process, we let them serve really pretty much at every level in our association. So where in some associations, maybe just if we were like those, maybe just the consigners could hold board seats or be committee chairman. You see people from every walk of the industry at IARA, and it's people who are doing business together. So we open those lines of communication. We work on common problems together so that we see it from both sides. And I think that's what's maybe unique about the IARA. But we do offer a lot of training, education, certainly have a big say in best practices and that type of thing.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is your education. I know, and starting out at the beginning, though, I want to go chronologically. You guys had come out with a certification. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because that was kind of a big deal. That was something nobody else was doing at the time you guys did it.
Yeah, for several years now, the CAR, Certified Automotive Remarketer, the little car brass pins that you see on the lapels of a lot of people at meetings. The car certification is, for years they've called it the gold standard in remarketing education. Probably at the time was the only remarketing education of its kind. But it does give you a 30,000-foot view of the industry, so that basically, if you're a consignor and maybe you don't know all the ins and outs of what happens at an auction, or if you're an auction and you're wondering what's behind the decision making of the consignor process, we made a very, even though it's just a 30,000 foot view, we made it very in depth from the standpoint that we cover remarketing channels, pre-sale activities, actual sale activities, post-sale activities, and then there's some legal ethics and terminology. So there's really 5 divisions of these courses. There's 20 courses in all that you have to pass an online exam, a proctored exam. So it's not a cakewalk. It's the people that carry that designation. If you see them sign their name with the letter CAR after it, they're proud of their accomplishment, because they had to come by it very honestly, and it's a pretty tough, rigorous course. Some people, depending on how much time you have to devote to it, some people get it done in months, some over the course of a year. But it's a really good way to establish a common language between the different segments of the industry, so that we're all using the same buzzwords, we're all talking about the same goals, understanding what each other's pain points are and what we think makes it work better. So it's a good course. We've obviously got some other offerings and things going on besides car certification.
Yeah. What I loved about that is it reminds me of on the independent side, the National Independent Automobile Dealers Association has the Certified Master Dealer Program. And same type of thing, where it's really rigorous, really tough. And what I was always interested about that, as I am about IARAs, when I go to the IARA meetings and you have people who've been in the business, been in the business 20, 30 years, and they go through that. And you think, well, gosh, they know everything, don't they? What is it about that appeals to them? What is the feedback you get from those veterans?
Well, a lot of those are now volunteer proctors for the course. So we use a lot of car graduates to do that. It's also part of the Auction Academy curriculum now. And so people that come out of there, which was already an excellent education process for auction people, but the car brings kind of expands their vision and their knowledge base by covering perhaps grounding, things that happen at the grounding dealer, the driver sales, things that happen even before the car shows up on the radar.
Right.
So it covers a lot of that, and a lot of used to, you'd get the objection, well, I've done this for 20 years, and
right.
I could have said the same thing. I'm car certified. And I'll do just a funny story on that. I when I first came in, I looked at the courses. I thought, well, I know about this, I know about that. And
Right.
I picked out 7 low-hanging fruits in 7 courses, and I took them and I passed and patted myself on the back, thought I was a genius, and thought, well, that wasn't so hard. I'll try 7 more. And these were 7 maybe that I wasn't so familiar with, and found out that you actually have to study and you have to know the content. So back in those days, we were doing it on paper and went
Right.
into a room and somebody was manually checking. Everything's automated now. We've got it all online at iara.biz.
Uh-huh.
So anybody that wants to be car certified, um, they can take this course. It's required training at a lot of the businesses that are members. You see all the GM Financial remarketing people and Hertz and it used to be ARI, Holman Enterprises, Bank of America, Manheim, a lot of their people, ADESA. You see all these different people from the different segments who are putting like their whole remarketing team through this as part of their company training, and it's required in a lot of cases. So it's got a lot of credibility, maybe because of who's associated with it, but I like to think mostly because of what it teaches and makes you a more well-rounded individual that maybe can even in your future career, it's like cross training. You're able to maybe
Right.
fit into a lot of different places.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that says a lot when you have these folks, like you say, veterans and people, and even now companies requiring it or encouraging it. That's great. I mean, that's the stamp of approval you want.
Just one more thing. I know there's a couple of companies that I can think of that on their job application it says car certified preferred. So they want somebody who's not just green, that maybe knows a little bit about the industry before they come in. We've had some non-members call us and say, hey, I want to become car certified. I think it will help me get a job I'm trying to get. So,
Nice.
it's really made its way into the industry and has become a staple.
Okay. And we know that you have meetings. You do car conference in spring, and you do your IARA summer roundtable.
Mhm.
When did that was just within the last couple of months. How did that go? Your summer roundtable this year?
Well, I mean, we keep saying this, and it's like a broken record, but this was another record breaker. We had more new attendees. We had record new members this year. We had, and they were in attendance there. We had a record number of consigners, not only at the meeting, but that participated in our consigner only meeting. I saw 36 different consigner companies even represented just within that meeting. So Nashville was a huge success. We had the feedback on it, our surveys, the content, and that's what everybody comes for. Come to find out, it's not so much all the time. It's nice to have these popular named speakers, and sometimes we have those even within the industry.
Sure.
But it really was a resounding success. We're going to be going to Chicago this year, which is kind of the homeland for Paul Seeger and Jeff Besher, our chairman and president. And so we're working things out right there. You'll be hearing a lot more about that later.
When will that be in Chicago?
That'll be in August. So
Okay.
We're still getting all the ink dry on the contracts and everything at the moment. So
Was there any issue that jumped out during the summer roundtable topic that people seem to coalesce?
Everybody's, different things are important to different people, and a lot of things are surfacing. Regulation has reared its ugly head again, and so we've done some things to address that we can talk about in a minute. But that was one of the topics. But also all the acquisitions and mergers that are taking place and spinoffs. It's just really. Maybe there's a cycle there that I'm missing, but I don't remember it ever being like this. When you see companies that have been around forever and now all of a sudden they're 2 or 3 companies, or you see another brand name company buying somebody else. Members buying members a lot of the times in our case. So I think that what just the different acquisitions and partnerships and interactions that are going on between people. Obviously, EV is the big buzzword with everybody. We have our own EV. We have an industry advancement committee that is primarily composed of different segments to address the anything from compliance to service and standards and that type of thing. So you're going to hear probably a whole lot more about EV, not just from everybody else, but we're going to try to approach it from a remarketer's viewpoint. Our guys and girls, the people who sell these cars, the consigners, they've got their own set of expectations, standards, things that we want to make sure we all are ahead of the curve and don't make any mistakes along the way. So these guys take it very serious. There's a lot of people spending a lot of money on this, and it's not something we can afford to mess up. So we're going to try to do everything we can for our members to make sure they're ready.
For sure. Okay, we're going to go back to education a little bit because you had mentioned something that came up in the summer roundtable. You have a new program, ACT, if I'm saying that right. Could you tell our listeners about that?
Yeah, ACT is Auction and Compliance Training. We were actually this has been something in the making for a few years, and I would have maybe the launch time is relevant. But a few years ago, I was approached by Lynn Weaver of IAG, an auction group. And there's a lot of the consigners, especially the banks, the people who were dealing with these know your third party, the KY3P audits, those audits. And now you see the FTC care rules, and there's all kinds of new things that next week it'll be something else. But they tell them, oh, are you compliant? And, the typical independent might get, if they're dealing with 20 different consigners, might get 20 different answers on what that means. So we were asked to come up with something that was at least common to most consigners and to the agencies. And that's who we're mostly worried about.
Right.
That we meet the standards that the government puts out there. So we ended up taking a lot of the things that were being shared by the banks and the financial institutions that they were already having implemented with some of their resale partners. We hired Jim Demetri of Demetri, DeCarlo and Kaufman. Jim, as you know, comes from former auction attorney and some of his staff, and he brought some consultants in and reviewed the IRS regs and went through the California and federal and Tennessee and federal laws to see what all we needed in here that would be common to most consigners on what the auctions and logistics industry and basically office staff, anybody that's handling paperwork or come in contact with a vehicle, which itself is a storehouse of private individual information.
Yes,
so if there's private identifiable information or PII involved in the paperwork or the car, and you have an employee that comes in contact with that, there is a responsibility stated in some of these regulations that you provide your own employees annual training, and that you make sure the third parties that you deal with have annual training. So this was really something we could not add to car certification because we only renew that more complex training every 3 years.
Right.
And this is a fast-moving train. It's changing. The requirements and the legislation changes almost all the time. So this had to be an annual training, something that we could update. And so that's what ACT is, auction and compliance training.
Okay.
Audit and compliance training for auctions, for logistics companies, for inspection riders, for anybody. You think online companies might be exempt, but they handle a lot of information. So anything that's online or physical that touches vehicles or the paperwork involved with that really need to have some proof that they have a compliance training in-house. And this can be a very important part of it and serve some of those annual training requirements.
Yeah, it's great that, like you said, a lawyer once said, it's nothing makes you bulletproof, but whatever you can show to say that you're making an effort to comply with stuff is a good thing.
Yeah, the good thing about, back in 2017, we went with a company and implemented a learning management system as part of our software, and it's accessible, of course, through the website. So when people go to IRA.biz, they can get a login, they can go in and access their certificates, their proof of training. And so it's something, if you're ever going through the audit process and you just need to have a, proof of training or whatever, at least you can go there and pull that information. And it's something that's made very affordable. I think the manager training is less than $100. The annual employee training is less than $50. So, and that's for any member of IRA. We're partnering with the National Auto Auction Association on that. We've met with their leadership a few times through this process, and they now have it available at nAAA.com.
Okay.
It has also become a part of the curriculum at Auction Academy. So this is going to be something more frequent, more reachable by more people, more doable by more people than perhaps even the car certification. But both are still a very important part of a comprehensive training program. The car certification will be updated every 3 years. This one is something that happens every year.
The good thing about that is that it also gets people in the mindset of constant learning, Now, so for IRA, can someone is interested in the ACT training? What do they do? What do you recommend them do?
Yeah, we're trying to make everything accessible and kind of self-service, if you will, at our site at IARA.biz. That's IARA.Bravo India Zebra.
Okay.
So if you go to that website, you will see under training, and perhaps even up in our slideshow, the acronyms ACT and the acronym CAR. That's where you can click on those. It'll give you more information about the course. If you click those, and then you'll have a choice to either purchase those online and complete the testing online for ACT. It's self-paced, it's self-test. So it's a little easier. You don't have to involve a lot of time to stay compliant. You can take this course and spend an hour or two doing that. And of course, the car training is something much more comprehensive and involves a lot more effort. But both are very valuable to our consigners.
For sure.
I know for a fact that because they're training their own people using both of these, that they want their people to be educated through the CAR program, and they also want them to be aware of any compliancy issues that with ACT. So if we keep our companies compliant and we keep them educated, we're doing a lot of what we're designed to do.
Now, for you, obviously, technology is a big difference over the last decade. What were some of the things that you think you learned? And obviously, somebody who's been in the industry for a long time, but heading this organization, what have you learned? Maybe that you didn't expect to learn, or that came up during your time at the helm.
Wow, I mean, you learn something new every day, and I know that's an overused phrase, but it's really true. Some of the partnerships and the way we're doing business, things that we're doing online that you didn't think people would do or accept or move as quickly as it has, and we know that that's kind of the way things are moving. Even there, you don't see an auction today that's not implementing all of these technologies and online capabilities. So there's certainly a very valuable place for the physical auctions and for the online.
For sure.
But I think just the education piece of it, Jeff, is you're expected to know so much, and I think especially when it comes to the regulatory part of it, there's more out there than any one human being, it seems, can keep up with. So we're trying to put all these things in a box and package them and make them a deliverable, I guess, for members. so that they can at least check that box and say, yeah, I'm aware of this. I'm not negligent in this area. I'm doing my best to train my people and make sure the people I do business with are doing it the right way. So that's just an ongoing challenge. Sometimes the consignor can seem like the bad guy, like, oh, they just asked too much, but really they're getting the same pressure, and they're protecting themselves and protecting their service providers from liability when they do this. It just makes us all, better at what we do. Trust me, they're having to jump through the same hoops that the service providers, the truckers, the auctions, they're all having to jump through a lot of hoops these days.
Excellent. Okay, so you talked about Summer Roundtable going next year in Chicago, but the next big event for you guys would be the Conference Automotive Remarketing, where you take part of. Could you tell people about when that is, where it is? And I noticed on the website you didn't have an agenda up yet, so I'm sure that's something you're working on. But what are you expecting coming up in the spring?
Yeah, we're still working on the agenda, but to some of the things that are different, in the past, you might go to a car conference and you come in on the day that IRA committees are meeting, and you're like, that's a committee. I'm not really part of that. I don't have anything that I need to attend for. So we've kind of switched it around with the help of Bob at Business Media, in the standpoint that we're going to make topics out of these committee meetings. In other words, we're going to do something you're interested in talking about. Committees exist for a reason.
Right.
We don't create, if we have a committee and all they do is meet, then we get rid of that committee. We change it into something else. But our committees have a purpose, and they really are the grease that keeps the wheels rolling in our association. They really do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Right.
And they're dealing with the topics that, like some of those that we talked about with regulation, with the EVs. And so every committee meeting that's going to be listed on there with a topic, you'll want to attend those. So it's kind of like come in a day early. You need to make sure you're there for this. And
as a reporter, I always say you got to go to stuff like that. I mean, as a reporter, because like you said, some people think, oh, that's boring. No, that's when you learn stuff. I've learned that as a regular reporter covering school boards or things like that, where you think a committee meeting, but you're exactly right. That's where kind of the beginning work happens there.
And I'm going to tell you, some of these committees, they meet, some of them during certain times of the year meet weekly. And we have some that meet monthly, and they have all the time in the world to do the regular committee business stuff, over Zoom or Teams or whatever media they're using. And so we do that. So we've asked them all to keep in mind, this is a visitors convention. This is something that when they want to come in and hear something that you're dealing with, and maybe a little bit about your committee and how you deal with that. But let's keep it topical in nature. And so I think you'll be rewarded if you come in, and if you're looking for content and knowledge, that's one way to get it.
And again, when is it and where is it?
Wow, I don't have the date in front of me.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, hold on. Let me pull it up here.
It's at carconference.com. They have hotel and meeting information, and the agenda is at carconference.com.
I see it. Yeah, Caesar's Palace, March 28th through March 30th. That sounds right.
Just a note on that, we've been meeting with about the future of CAR with those folks, and there may be some new locations involved in the future. I'll just drop a little teaser and let everybody kind of guess about that. But I can promise you, we are looking for ways to upgrade everything that we're involved with, whether it be our summer roundtable or our spring business meeting there at the FAR conference.
Fantastic.
We look forward to seeing everybody at both.
The National Independent Automobile Dealers Association drew members from across the country to Washington, D.C. to lobby lawmakers, regulators, and other officials on behalf of the used car industry. The NIADA's National Policy Conference returned to the nation's capital in September after the pandemic hiatus. Brett Scott, NIADA Vice President of Governmental Affairs, recently spoke with Used Car News by phone to discuss the effects of the conference. Scott said it went extremely well. There were still some pandemic-era limitations depending on the official's preference, so some meetings were held virtually. But since it was the first policy conference held since 2019, Scott was happy with the event. He said, "We had a lot of great feedback. Over recent years, NIADA has made its mark in the Capitol, building relationships at all levels of the government. This year's event was filled with some heavy hitters, including top officials who were appointed since the 2019 conference. Members of the NIADA's board of directors had fireside chats face-to-face with members of Congress about NIADA's issues of concern." Scott said the group also wanted to impress upon officials the impact that any safety recall restrictions or expansions might have on the industry. The used car industry wants to have input on the recall issue and hopes that members of Congress will keep NIADA's concerns in mind. Group members were able to engage successfully with lawmakers on a host of these issues. This summer, Gus Hitz, a special agent for the National Crime Insurance Bureau, asked auction professionals in his training session who had experienced catalytic converter theft and where they experienced it. Hands went up across the room. One person said Denver, another said Pennsylvania, and a third said Virginia. The answer? It's everywhere. Hitz said when it comes to catalytic converter thieves, auctions offer up a kid in a candy store opportunity. Auto dealerships are another prime target for catalytic converter theft. The crime is so prevalent that lawmakers at all levels of government are working on solving it. State legislatures, the U.S. Congress, and the National Independent Automobile Dealers Association are all working to end this wave of thefts. At press time, federal, state, and local law enforcement partners from across the U.S. had executed a nationwide coordinated takedown of leaders and associates of a national network of thieves, dealers, and processors for their roles in the conspiracies involving stolen catalytic converters sold to a metal refinery for tens of millions of dollars. Business owners can also do things to prevent this crime. Hitz heard from business owners during a session at the National Auto Auction Convention and Expo in Dallas this summer. One auction owner installed surveillance cameras on his site to discourage theft. Another owner said local police make a point of cruising by her auction, which also acts as a deterrent. Light-duty trucks and SUVs are more likely to be targeted because it's easier for criminals to access the catalytic converters. For regular cars or sedans, all it takes is a floor jack, a reciprocating saw, and a few minutes, Hitz said. Hybrids like the Toyota Prius are believed to have more precious metals and also become bigger targets, as well as commercial fleet vehicles. Craig Emelung, general manager of Mannheim's Mid-Atlantic Market Center, was elected president of the Virginia Independent Automobile Dealers Association for 22-23 at October's annual convention in Roanoke. He'll direct the activities of the 1,100-member VIADA. A 30-year veteran of the automotive industry and leader in auto auction management, Emelung is responsible for leading the collaboration of shared resources and support functions among Mannheim, Baltimore, Washington, Mannheim, Fredericksburg, and Mannheim, Harrisonburg. Previous roles include Senior Director of Operations Support for all of Mannheim's North American operating locations. In addition to VIADA, Emelung is also serving as Vice President of the National Auto Auction Association for its 22-23 term. Thanks for listening to Used Car News Podcast. Each month we'll bring you fast and reliable news that car dealers can rely on for this evolving industry. For a free subscription of Used Car News, please go to usedcarnews.com. This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. Make sure to share us on social media and like and follow wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. Darren Sutherland, Executive Director. Jacob Sutherland, Director. Matt Golden, News Director. Chin Ray Zhang, Director Producer. And Jason Gentarola, Audio Producer. All rights reserved.